The air of global diplomacy is tense. And yet again, all eyes are on India. In a world where alliances shift overnight and economic warfare replaces the old-fashioned battlefield, New Delhi stands as the quiet but powerful center of gravity. Something big is happening behind the scenes, an energy of strategy and defiance that is reshaping geopolitics in real time. From Washington to Moscow, from Beijing to Brussels, leaders are recalculating because India is no longer playing by anyone's script, it's writing its own. Over the last few weeks, a series of back-channel meetings, trade developments, and diplomatic statements have made one thing clear. India has become the world's indispensable balancing power, and the choices it's making today will echo through decades of global politics. It began with quiet but confident diplomacy. As the United States struggles to manage tensions with China and Russia simultaneously, India has stepped into a role no one else could fill. The corridors of South Bloc are alive with strategic whispers. New Delhi is reinforcing old ties with Washington while keeping an iron handshake with Moscow and maintaining a pragmatic, cautious conversation with Beijing. This isn't just balancing its strategic leverage on a scale rarely seen. And what's driving it? It's national interest, economic power, and the unspoken recognition that India has become the world's most critical swing state in geopolitics. Washington wants India closer militarily, economically, ideologically. But as American diplomats discovered in their recent high-level meetings, India is not signing up for any alliance that limits its autonomy. Whether it's oil from Russia, semiconductors from the United States, or energy corridors through the Middle East, India is taking what it needs and discarding the rest. When questioned about its growing trade with Moscow despite Western sanctions, one Indian official reportedly said, "We will buy oil from wherever it's cheapest. Our people come first." That statement has become a symbol of India's geopolitical posture: unbending, unapologetic, and laser-focused on self-interest. At the same time, India's defense strategy is undergoing a quiet transformation. Joint military drills with the United States and European partners are being paired with increasing defense procurement from indigenous programs. From aircraft carriers to missile systems, India is building a military architecture designed to ensure no power can dictate terms to it again. Analysts say that the Indo-Pacific theater has become the defining stage of 21st century power politics. And India stands at its center, not as a pawn but as a player. Across the world, this assertiveness is drawing both admiration and discomfort. European officials privately admit that India's refusal to follow Western sanctions policy on Russia has forced a rethink in Brussels. Countries like Germany and France are now pursuing trade and defense agreements with India independently, bypassing American pressure. Even Japan, long a loyal Western ally, has strengthened its strategic and infrastructure partnerships with New Delhi. The Quad Alliance, once dismissed as symbolics, evolving into a quiet but influential network of shared intelligence, maritime cooperation, and technological exchange. But the real transformation is economic. India's rise is no longer a projection, it's measurable. Global investors see it as the fastest-growing major economy, and every geopolitical player wants a piece of the Indian market. As Western supply chains decouple from China, New Delhi is emerging as the destination of choice for manufacturing, digital infrastructure, and energy diversification. The Apple factories in Tamil Nadu, the semiconductor facilities under construction in Gujarat, and the green hydrogen corridors connecting India to Europe are not isolated developments. They are parts of a grand strategy. Make India the new hub of global production and trade. Meanwhile, on the energy front, India continues to play its own game brilliantly. Despite U.S. warnings and G7 restrictions, Indian refiners are buying discounted Russian crude, refining it, and exporting products to global markets, including the same Western nations that have sanctioned Moscow. It's perfectly legal, extremely profitable, and geopolitically audacious. Western diplomats privately grumble about it, but none can deny that global fuel stability now depends, in part, on Indian refineries. In short, India has turned sanctions into opportunity. This self-assurance extends beyond economics. In the United Nations, India's voice is louder than ever. Its call for reforming global institutions for a permanent Security Council seat and for fairer trade frameworks is gaining traction. Developing nations from Africa to Latin America see India not as a former colony, but as a partner who understands their struggles. Prime Minister Modi's recent visits to Africa and the Middle East have reinforced this image of India as a bridge between North and South, East and West, tradition and technology. And while Washington continues to oscillate between wooing and warning India, the truth is undeniable. The United States needs India more than India needs the United States. Whether it's countering China, securing supply chains, or stabilizing the Indo-Pacific, India has become a strategic necessity for Washington. Even when there are disagreements in oil, trade, or sanctions, the relationship endures because the geopolitical math simply doesn't allow it to fail. India is too big, too dynamic, and too vital to ignore. Inside Moscow, the mood is equally clear. For Russia, India is not only a loyal buyer of oil and defense systems, but also a political friend that refuses to follow the Western chorus. President Putin's administration has reportedly prioritized trade with India as one of its top foreign policy goals. The use of local currencies in transactions, investments in energy infrastructure, and cooperation in space and defense industries have made the partnership resilient. But India's balancing act doesn't end there. It's quietly managing one of the world's most complex relationships with China. The border tensions remain unresolved, the rivalry sharp, but New Delhi is not letting confrontation derail pragmatism. Trade between the two nations continues to rise, even as India diversifies its strategic dependencies. The message is clear: compete when necessary, cooperate when possible. This dual approach has become a hallmark of India's diplomacy. As this geopolitical web tightens, one thing stands out: India's rise is not just about power, but about perception. In capitals across the world, policymakers are realizing that India's decisions increasingly shape global outcomes. When India banned rice exports, food prices surged worldwide. When it joined hands with the U.S. on critical technologies, global supply chains recalibrated. When it hosted the G20 and championed the voices of developing nations, it changed the tone of international diplomacy. Every move now carries global consequences. The Western media, once skeptical of India's assertiveness, now describes it as the pivotal power. Analysts predict that by 2030, India will be among the top 3 economies in the world with unmatched diplomatic reach. The G7 might still dominate the headlines, but the G20 under India's leadership has shown that the real energy of the future lies in collaboration, not coercion. And that's where India's influence shines brightest. For the average Indian citizen, this geopolitical awakening translates into national pride. Decades ago, India's foreign policy was seen as cautious, reactive, and defensive. Today, it's proactive, confident, and bold. It's not waiting for global recognition, it's commanding it. As one foreign diplomat put it recently, you can't have a serious conversation about the future of the world without India at the table. And perhaps that's the story of our times. While superpowers clash and alliances shift, India remains calm at the center, balancing, negotiating, and leading with quiet authority. From global trade routes to digital governance, from climate talks to space exploration, India is shaping narratives and setting agendas. The future of geopolitics isn't about domination anymore, it's about equilibrium. And India has mastered that art better than anyone. In the coming months, expect more headlines about trade deals, defense cooperation, and new diplomatic initiatives. Expect more attempts by major powers to pull India closer to their side. But also expect New Delhi to say yes only when it serves Indian interests. Because in this new world order, where economic and energy dependencies dictate power, India holds the ultimate advantage: flexibility. The story of India's rise is not built on confrontation but calculation. It's not about shouting louder but standing taller. While other nations scramble to adapt to new realities, India is quietly designing them. It's a shift so profound that even its rivals can't ignore it. The old world of geopolitical hierarchies is fading, and in its place, a new world of balance, resilience, and autonomy is emerging with India at its center. In short, what the world is witnessing today is not an accident, it's a transformation. A transformation that began with confidence, matured through crisis, and now defines a new era. The message from New Delhi to the world is unmistakable. India will engage but never submit. Cooperate but never conform. And as the winds of geopolitics swirl around the globe, one truth stands. Steady, this century of balance has begun, and India is leading it.